Woordvoerder van die Departement van Water en Sanitasie, Sputnik Ratau, gesels vanoggend oor die huidige stand van sake rakende water in die land en veral met betrekking tot die landbousektor. So good morning, Mr. Ratau, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Elsa, and thank you so much for affording us the opportunity.
Now, Mr. Ratau, it has recently been reported that there is a big improvement in the levels of the Western Cape storage dams in comparison to previous years. What is the current state of affairs in this regard?
Well, with regards to the Western Cape, when we look at it, they've done very well. Because overall, we see that they are standing somewhere, when you look at the provincial averages, they are around the 62, 63, 64%, which is slightly better than where we were. Actually, when we look at it year on year, there's a huge improvement of close to 10%. So that is a very huge margin when you think about it. And when we look at the specific water supply systems in the Western Cape itself, we can see that there is an improvement, and particularly because if you remember, our biggest worry was the Breede Goritz, because it was not performing well over the last couple of years with continuing drought in that region, whereas the Western Cape water supply system continues to be much more improved and is as stable as it has been, for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. And the other provinces?
The other provinces have improved as well. The only, area where we still have serious concerns is the Eastern Cape. Whereas when you look at the provincial average, we can see that there is an improvement between 55% a year ago and 65% this year. But when we look at some pockets that are not performing so well, and those unfortunately are the ones that are affecting most of the areas where we have a lot of economic activity, and that would be your Amatole water supply system as well as the Algoa water supply system, and those are responsible primarily for water supply to the areas of East London as well as Gqeberha, what we used to call Port Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. So that is a huge concern for us, because we know if those two areas are not able to perform, obviously, the Eastern Cape, the economy thereof is going to be on a downward trend. When we look at Amatole, it has improved to about 61.3%. Remember, last year at this same time, it was around 37%. And when we look at Algoa, it's still struggling. That is even worse, because at the moment it is at 15.2%, which is almost a similar amount to the 15.6% of a year ago. So there has not been an improvement at all, or rather it is very slight, because when we look at the individual dams, we can see that that is exactly where the issues lie, that there is no recharge of the water supply systems, so that the dams would not also perform in a manner that we would be happy about. Mm-hmm. And that is our major concern. Together with the southern part of KwaZulu-Natal, we know that the Ugu area is still struggling, and some of the, not quite a larger part, but a little bit of Limpopo as well continues to be a concern to us.
And how would you describe the situation in terms of the agricultural sector? Is there anything that you can point out at this stage?
Yes, what we see, what we know is that, for instance, in the Eastern Cape, we remember that that there is a huge amount of land that is used for agriculture. We have some citrus fruit that is struggling in some areas of your Port Elizabeth and surrounding areas, the more rural areas and farming areas thereof. We are concerned that some of the floods have also not helped, because they have affected, the crops in a negative way. Some of the farmers have said that they would be seeing less of a harvest than they would have expected if things had gone according to plan. And that shows you that sometimes you have, both sides of both extremes in weather patterns that do not really help, where you move from the one extreme of drought and then immediately you move across the spectrum to floods and which are not helpful because of just the devastation that happens around that. But overall, I think in our engagements with the farming sector, which we have done quite a lot over the last couple of months, when we were traveling across the country, province by province, we know that our farming community is highly motivated and wanting to do the work that it has to do. That is why part of what we have to resolve, obviously, are issues of how we can be able to assist with water accessibility and availability to the best of our capacity.
Now, what are your thoughts about the feeling that a sewage spill is a national safety issue or concern?
That is an issue that has arisen and continues to be a bugbear for us as the regulators, as the regulator of the sector. Why is it so? Is because the sewage spills impact on the environment generally. But when those sewage spills also come into the water ecosystems, then the impact is something that continues to be very undesirable. Obviously, what it means is that we then have higher costs of water towards treatment of water. Secondly, it implies that the raw water that is in the rivers and the streams and so on that gets polluted by this raw sewage or these spillages then cannot be utilized by the farmers, by the industries as raw as it is, because then there is an impact. And remember that for the farming community, especially agricultural products that get to be exported, and South Africa exports quite a lot of agricultural product, from your crops to your fruit to even your meat. Then the quality of the exports get to be impacted upon. But remember as well that as soon as we have those spillages that affect our water ecosystems, we are operating in a global village. So those kind of news also travel, further than our borders. And obviously the people that receive our product then can be, quite hesitant to receive as much quantity as they normally would, simply because they would be suspicious of the quality that is coming out of the country. So this matter is not just localized within the country, but it also has an impact on the general economic activity of the country and ultimately even the GDP, because we cannot afford any reduction in the kind of interaction that we have with our trading partners. And therefore, agriculture being one of the critical tenets of our economy, we have to make sure that we protect the activity of agriculture, and that we working together with municipalities, we really have to bring this matter to a very reduced level. And hopefully we can even come to a point where we will have so little of these spillages that they would rather be an exception than the norm.
Water rights and the usage of water. What would you like to point out within this regard?
Water rights are fundamental and central to our economic activity. And obviously we know that farming has got to use and has got to have access to quite a hefty amount of water, and that is just how things are. Part of what we have been working around, obviously, is looking at how we can bring in new players into the agricultural sector. Obviously, you know, the new players would not be at the same level as the established agricultural role players that have been there for a very long time. And that is why it is important for us to continue to engage and work together with the agricultural sector, not just organized agriculture as you would have with Agri-SA or NAFU and so on. But we must remember that there are also the small farmers that are not members of any of these unions. And therefore, we also need to reach out to those and ensure that their requirements and their desires are also met and they are satisfied. And therefore, the issues of water rights is something that we have to work around and work towards and ensure that all of us have got a common understanding on how as a country, we look at the issue of water rights. So it is also critical that we work together with the Department of Agriculture and Land Reform, understanding that their own programs as well would need the support of the work of the Department of Water and Sanitation in terms of access to water sources and water resources in order to make sure that as they reform the issues of land, as more people acquire land, as more people get access to land rights, you know, that is supported by the requisite water availability that is then attached to those kind of activities. So those two cannot be work against each other, but they have to work in tandem and work together, so that for the good of the country, for the good of the economic uptake of the country, but also for the good of the individual farmers who may or may not be part of the bigger, broader agricultural mainstream. That would be your Agri-SA and so on. But what we have also experienced in our engagements across the provinces is that beyond the work that we do and beyond the areas where we are active, we have seen that the farming community itself is working towards ensuring that they work closer and closer and work together. Because I think part of what they have realized is that in order to bring up, you know, the small farmers, in order to bring into the fray the new entrants, they have to work together with established agriculture, but established agriculture also has got to have an appreciation of the fact that there are new players that are coming into the fore. And therefore, we have to see how we can be able to accommodate all of us in this mix.
And March is also known as National Water Month, but the time, we don't have any time left. But thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Ratau.
Thank you so much for accommodating us, Elsa, and the team. Thank you.
En so gesels Sputnik Ratau van die Departement van Water en Sanitasie.